So you see a lot of talk and confusion out there about whether it's safe to dry fire a weapon or not. Well, let's take a little bit of a look at that and see if we can get an answer. Now, dry firing is basically pulling the trigger on a firearm when it's not loaded. Now, is that a safe thing to do for the firearm? Well, the first thing about dry firing is if you are going to do it, absolutely make sure that your weapon is unloaded, because you don't want to go around shooting when you don't mean to. But when I ask if it's safe, I mean, is it safe for the weapon? Is it going to damage your firearm to do that? Now, you'll get some where they'll tell you, yeah, don't dry fire this thing. You're going to mess it up and it'll tear it up there and it won't be good. But then you get others like this one where not only is it safe to dry fire it, but to take it apart, you in fact have to dry fire it to get the trigger group in the right position for it to come apart. So, what makes it dangerous on something like that .22 revolver versus a gun like this where you're expected to be able to? Well, to get into that, I'm going to take the cylinders out of these revolvers to help me demonstrate. Okay, so I've got the two revolver cylinders here. This one came out of an H&R .22 revolver, and this one came out of a .45 Long Colt single-action Army clone. So let me go ahead and start with the .45 Long Colt here. Now, this is like what goes into most revolvers, a rimmed cartridge, and as I drop these rounds into here, you'll see it is the rim that actually holds these into the cylinder and keeps them from falling out. Now, the primer on this is located in the center of the cartridge because this is a center fire cartridge. So the firing pin hits right there in the center of the cartridge. Now, the firing pin on most of these doesn't go just right to where that is and hit it there. It actually has a bit of over travel and can go a little bit further on it there, but that allows it to have enough force there to actually impact the primer and set it off. So the question is, if there isn't a cartridge there, where is the firing pin going? Well, in the case of this center fire cartridge, it's just going right here into the center, into nowhere. There's nothing back there for that to run into. So the firing pin just goes into that and bounces back, and no damage done to it there. Now, it's going to be a little bit different with the cylinder from this .22 long rifle revolver. These are, once again, rimmed cartridges, and so they drop in and hold in place the exact same way that the cartridges do in the other. There's just a little bit of a difference about the cartridge itself. These cartridges are not center fire. There's no center primer on it there for the firing pin to hit. So if the firing pin doesn't hit the center, what does the firing pin hit? The answer to that is the firing pin hits the rim. That's why this is a rim fire cartridge. So if that cartridge is not in there, where is the firing pin going? Well, the answer to that is the firing pin is going to hit edge of it there where the rim would normally be sitting. And that's why that's a problem. But what happens when this hits onto that there? Well, nothing good will happen there. The two things that could happen is it could end up leaving gouges and marks here on the cylinder itself. I've got a little tiny mark on here from when I was making the video about this one, where when I was trying to decock it, I accidentally dry fired it. It's also interesting to point out, I'm going to make sure that I don't dry fire this here because you don't want to do that with a rim fire. You can see as I pull back the trigger here that this is, that's not good. Fortunately, that one-time dry firing, it did not do any irreparable damage to it there. It's going to be okay, but you don't want to do that a whole lot. The other thing that could happen is that the firing pin itself could start getting deformed, and that will cause problems. If this gets deformed, then the cartridges could start not sitting in there properly. The timing of it could get off. It could start not cycling properly. If this starts getting deformed, then your rounds aren't going off all the time. And those are all going to be bad things. Now, while I was talking about this in the context of revolvers, it's also true with pistols and rifles. It's just easiest to demonstrate it with these. So the basic rule of thumb is going to be center fires can be dry fired and rim fires cannot be dry fired. But that is just a generalization. That is not a complete and always true rule, because there are always exceptions to everything. You do run into a lot of modern rim fires that are safe to be dry fired, such as a Ruger 1022. This actually does not have any type of bolt holdback when it's empty. So when you get to the end of the mag, you don't know until you try to fire it and it goes click. So they've designed it where you don't have the over travel with the firing pin and it doesn't go hitting up against the chamber. There are also some other modern handguns, including a lot of the 22s from Ruger, that are safe to dry fire. You also run into a lot of older firearms where, even though they're center fire, it may not necessarily be safe to dry fire them, because there could be in the other mechanisms in there places where the firing pin and some other components can over travel and bang into each other and start causing problems. And it's also going to be a problem for any type of percussion cap based black powder firearm, where you don't want to have the hammer hitting up against a nipple. It's called a nipple. Don't laugh at it. And that could eventually cause the nipple to get deformed, and then you won't be able to put caps on it, and that'll cause you problems. And I guess you can, dry fire flintlocks, but you're just wearing your flint down, so, why? So the rule of thumb is going to be, if it is a modern centerfire firearm, it's going to be safe for you to dry fire it. And if it is a rim fire firearm, it's probably not safe for you to dry fire it, but it could possibly be. You'll basically just want to check in that case and make sure that it is. If you're finding yourself in a position where you need to be able to dry fire it, there's a few different ways to do that. I'm going to grab these already fired 22 shells here. But basically you could load these in just like you were loading new rounds into it. And now that we've got all these in here, we know that we can actually dry fire this all that we want to there, and it's running up against this, so it's not going to damage it any. You could also buy things like snap caps to make sure that you're able to dry fire them safely. Pretty much just want to make sure that you have something in there so that the firing pin isn't just banging up against the cylinder or the chamber. So I hope that you found this video useful and interesting. If you did, be sure to give it a thumbs up and a like. You can also tell me what you thought about it down in the comment section. And if you're interested, you can also subscribe to my channel. Make sure that you catch all the videos that I post and not miss anything. I'm Jeremy with Poindexter G, and we'll see you next time.